but afterwards we pulled out one of ours and everybody was still dancing, and I was like,
yeah,
well,
there you go. Yeah,
I found the equation.
But as soon as you stop the cover, the time starts ticking. It's slow.
yeah, right. You're losing people fast, you know.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is,
so
all those wedding bands are like, they have those ready to go. You got to have 2 or 3 seconds and be right out there with the next beat, you know. So yeah, and that's a certain magic that happens when you have a large group of people dancing. You have to be very cognizant of that. That chemistry can blow up on you really fast. Check.
Much better.
Check. Okay, there we go.
Ooh, you're crisp. You're crisp.
Yeah, man. These PR30s sound good. It's
Nice.
a good microphone. I had a stand for it, and I didn't bring it home, so I'm going to awkwardly hold it in front of my face the whole time.
Sorry, I feel bad now.
Not many people hold condenser mics in their hand, man.
It looks wrong. I did leave the thing attached, so I can hold it like this too. If we want.
Oh man,
Nice.
Good stuff.
I like it. So I'm Derek. That's Steve. We're part of the band, the Cosmic Vultures. We did this podcast because we were bored and we wanted to meet people.
Yeah, great, man.
And
it's our own social network.
Yeah, and we were saying we always say this. We've met more people on Zoom than we have in real life. It's crazy.
Yeah,
like we'll play shows with a bunch of bands, and we'll be, it'll be a nice thing. Like, oh, how's it going? Good to see you. You did a great job. And then we invite them back on the show, and it's like, now we know who you are because we're talking to you and not saying hi at a show, and that's it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you don't really have time to chop it up at the shows,
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody's in a rush,
Exactly. It's great to meet you, man.
Yeah.
Likewise. Have to say, we've done this is like our 24th, 5th episode or whatever. The Player 0036 album might be my favorite album I've done so far.
Oh, right. That's what we like to hear. Thanks, man.
Dude, it's so good. Coming from somebody who's a big jazz fan, and like I said in the messenger, like it reminded me of like Zappa jazz, the way he it's jazz, but he flips it on its head type thing. And a little Steely Dan as well. I got elements of both, and just fucking great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're it's like huge praise to be mentioned in the same breath as either of those names, But yeah, that's definitely something I go for. I'm a huge Zappa freak. That was like my guy growing up. I listened to him almost exclusively for like 3 years, or he was basically the only artist whose albums I purchased in high school for a period. I was trying to buy the whole collection, but since there were 57 of them or whatever, I got up to like 30 before I went to college and CDs ceased to be a thing. But yeah, man, it was a really fun record. We did it super old school, no click. We didn't even have cans on. Like, we didn't even wear headphones for most of those takes. Like, we just went in a room and played them. Some of the tunes were comped together, half of one take, half of another. And there was a spot edit here or there. But, yeah, we approached it super, super old school, just like went in and played the tunes. And we ended up releasing it on vinyl. It was the first time I'd ever done that.
I gotta pick one up.
Yeah. All right. We can make that happen.
Do you sell them on Bandcamp or anything like that, or?
Yeah, they're just on my website. But cool. You just go through me. We can. Yeah, hit me up after. You'll get the friends and family discount.
The problem with me and Steve is that we buy records and we keep them shrink wrapped because
I never
pretty.
Because I'll listen to them on Spotify. I'm like, I can hear it, but I don't want to disturb the vinyl prestige.
Ooh, company man over here.
I want a sign. I'll pay full price for a signed copy.
Yeah, sign.
Okay, yeah, we can make that happen. Man.
That record is screaming to be part of my collection.
Yeah, I need that for sure. Dude, I listened to it, and one of the first things I thought of was John Schofield. Are you a Schofield fan?
Yeah, definitely. I was going for that.
Hearing Schofield in there because he's a legend. So anytime someone represents that style, it's so good.
Yeah. He was big in the 90s when I was coming up. That was when he was hitting his peak with Medeski, Martin Wood. Everyone listened to a go-go till the CD wore out. And and I'm no exception, man. I tried to take some ideas from him, kind of mix it up with some fusion-y kind of sounds and go for it. We aren't always like as chill as some of those Schofield records. He made some very laid back kind of stuff. We were pushing it a little more on some of these tunes. And particularly, my drummer Steve is a monster. He's like a hard hitter. It's a very different style than like Chris Wood, but definitely in sort the structure of the album and the way I wrote the tunes and the way I approached soloing, Schofield is a huge influence there, for no doubt.
That's awesome.
And I heard
Yeah,
like
man.
once in a while, I think it was on I forget what track it was. I heard it was like dueling, it was like double saxophone sound.
Yeah, so yeah, that's our dude Colin Edgar. So he plays with me. You know, the rhythm section for Tom Dowd Group is just the same guys from Strange Changes. We just, Strange Changes usually plays at between 7 and 9 pieces, depending on who's available in a given night. And we most of that record was a quartet. But yeah, we have the 2 tunes with Colin. And yeah, he's an unbelievably talented player, local Massachusetts guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple years ago, and yeah, he's got the full Roland Kirk, Jeff Coffin. You'll once in a while you'll see someone who can play the 2 saxes at the same time, and it's cool, but it's a little gimmicky. But that guy never ceases surprising me, coming up with new stuff. He's an incredibly expressive, in the moment kind of player. So yeah, we had to get him on the record because he's just so fun to play with.
That's you mentioned Jeff Coffin. I'm assuming you know Bill Fleck and the Flecktones.
Yeah, the first time I ever saw someone play 2 saxes at the same time was growing up in Cleveland, seeing Jeff Coffin. Yeah, and it's the same thing. I mean, with Strange Changes, we have lots of talented soloists. I mean, you hear it all over Player 36, and just getting to a point where it's like, I don't even know if we're going to have anyone else besides him take a solo anymore. Like I could get up and play the best guitar solo I've ever played in my life, and everyone's just kind of talking, sipping their drinks. He plays 1 lick with the double sax, and all of a sudden, like, phones are out. Like everyone's
too big.
Yeah. Seriously, man. Well, we love playing this outdoor gig we do up in Burlington, or we pre-COVID we used to anyway. And it's that like people are walking by the venue and eyes bugging out, and everyone's stopping and taking pictures. It's cool because like it's a gimmick until he starts playing, and you're like, oh no, he's just as good with 2 in his hand as he is with 1.
Dude, that's hard. That's hard.
Right, absolutely. Speaking of COVID, obviously this is sort of a generic question, but how is it affecting you? Are you guys still doing stuff like? Because we're making an album digitally, we just keep sending each other files, but I want to see how it's kind of affecting you guys.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. I mean, you got to adapt to survive right now. It was a big blow. Actually, I had the day before my birthday at the Lizard Lounge, a Friday night, booked to release that Player 36. We had a big release show, and we ended up canceling it day of. It was right as the cases were starting to break out, and I had found out. I had a friend I'd had contact with earlier that week who came down with it, and so it was a very painful decision. It feels like the right decision in the rearview mirror. But it was really brutal to build all the way up to that release and then just have to pull the plug on it. So we'll make it happen on the other side when the time comes. I'm excited to do that. But yeah, in the meantime, I've been demoing. I actually, in a weird mixture of good and bad luck, I ended up hurting my left forearm weightlifting like right at the end of March, and I'm still rehabbing it. So I've been like unable to play guitar. And in a way, I'm quite fortunate. All my gigs got canceled for like 4 months because it's given me time to rehab and kind of, focus on improving my technique as I start to ramp it back up. But we've been doing the same thing you guys have, which is I've basically been demoing by email. I mentioned to you the other day that I'm working on another Tom Dowd Group record that will have singing on it too. It's basically, the Strange Changes lineup, but I'm starting to make the Tom Dowd Group the more like my sort of pop fusion approach. It's not really pop, but it's pop to me, maybe more in the vein of Steely Dan. And I'm trying to use Strange Changes more for the sort of like Zappa, Dillinger, or wild experimental writing I do. That Tom Dowd follow-up record, getting some of those tunes done. I'm starting to work on tracking my vocals for that record and working on another Strange Changes full-length release sometime down the line.
Yeah, dude, that Strange Changes, man. I was sitting there and I was like, wow. Just every track was like just different. It was his own movie, type thing. And it was like, it screamed Zappa to me in the best way possible. Because one thing that I like to do is when I'm writing a song, like I'll never have lyrics. I'll just be on my acoustic and I'll just start playing chords and I start singing gibberish because I don't know what I'm going to say yet. And I end up saying really stupid things. And I'm like, I kind of wish I could just be comedy and just say, you know what I mean? So like in a lot of ways, like your stuff is comedic, but in a really good way. Because I feel like it would be really easy to make it cheesy. but you don't. You make it so it's cheesy in a really good way.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the
you know,
Zappa thing, right? And people
Right.
kind of either love that or hate that, and it's very clear which side of that I come down on.
Dinosaur Gravy.
Like
Dinosaur Gravy. I was
yeah,
like, this is gonna be a fun album.
that's like that's right. That's the Zappa tune, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's it's my template for the band coming out of school was like Zappa, Mingus, Mr. Bungle. Those were my 3 bands.
Dude, Mr. Bungle?
Yeah, there we go.
I
See,
haven't heard that name since like 9th grade.
yeah, man, I hear it in my head all day, baby.
A lot of big fans of that band. Man.
Yeah, they were a huge influence on me and some of Mike Patton's other acts, especially. So yeah, the thing that those 3 groups have in common for me is basically that they're all, they all work in that like larger augmented rock or pop or jazz ensemble. Zappa's bands were 8 to 10 pieces. Mr. Bungle overdubbed like crazy, over a 5 or 6 piece lineup. And Mingus tend to like this kind of hybrid, small, large jazz combo, which was the way I liked to write. And the other side of it was that I think all 3 of those acts in their own way are basically musical satire. Zappa is really, it's running social commentary. A lot of music is heartbreak and, dealing with the pain of existence in everyday life, whether it's monotony or love or anger. And Zappa, you don't really get much of what keeps Zappa up at night in Zappa's music. Zappa is sort of talking about the world. He's processing it through humor and satire. I think Mr. Bungle clearly does quite a bit of that. Mr. Bungle doesn't tell you much about like what Mike Patton's insecurities are. It's this kind of dark satire of America. And there's that in Mingus too. Mingus, I think, bears his soul a little more and is a little more personal than those other guys. But it's really cool. It's fun. A fun thing about Mingus that he writes instrumental satire. That he's got these like there's almost no vocal content in his music. 98% of it is instrumental. But if you listen to the album Mingus he has this tune Fables of Faubus, which was mocking I forget which state. It was a governor of the southern state, but just the music wow 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 wow. It's this like comic march. He's mocking the guy without saying a word about him. And he'll that kind of subversive content comes out in his song titles and in the music a bit. So those were the 3 acts that were the idea behind Strange Changes. And then I also, as we progressed, we ended up, you can see on YouTube, we wound up a couple years ago doing a Dillinger Escape Plan cover, like this like instrumental jazz fusion arrangement of one of their tunes that kind of went sort of viral. It gets a lot of views from their fans. And after that, I started incorporating some more of their sounds into my stuff too. So, originally it was Zappa, Mr. Bungle, and Mingus. So now I got to add Dillinger as the 4th wheel there.
That's awesome, dude. It's funny. You just made me think of when I met my wife and I was getting her into music that I like. We both met because we were giant Beatle fans.
Great.
And that's how we met because we just love the Beatles. But I said, you ever heard Frank Zappa? And she was like, no. And I had to explain it to her first. I said, so I don't want you just going into it just to go into it. I want to tell you. I'm like, he doesn't sing about heartbreak. He sings about being a dental floss tycoon in Montana. And she's like, I don't understand what you're saying. I was like, maybe that was a bad way to put it.
I love that like social commentary like angle, like you were talking about before. It's like traditionally you have the struggles of everyday life, love, laughter, all that good stuff. But then you have Zappas of the world, Mingus. Their approach is much more. It's different, and they're kind of maybe making fun of society in a lot of ways, and like how stupid a lot of things are. And it was Frank Zappa, "I Am the Slime." That's kind of like one of my favorite songs by him. Yeah, making fun of how just like people are brainwashed and watching TV, and when at a point maybe not a lot of people were thinking that, and that's
he was at the forefront of a lot of that. Or the most poignant, maybe pertinent Zappa song for the moment we're living in is "Trouble Every Day," which was his reaction to the Watts riots, which was 64 or no 65. I think it was 65. But it was, and it's incredibly moving. That's one of the rare examples where you really do feel like you're seeing behind the mask with Zappa. He's revealing some vulnerability in that song. Like the emotions are raw, and you can tell that he's really reacting in real time to the images he's seeing on the TV, he says it in the song. So, that's a really powerful tune, and one that has a lot of relevance. What's the line at the end? Something like, we had sat around and watched this thing begin, but there won't be many live to see it really end, because the fire in the street's not like the fire in your heart. And that in the minds of these people, this could start in any street or any town, and blah, blah, blah. It's deep. He was exactly right.
Yeah.
The race relations problems were not fixed, and they're still plaguing us today. So, he was satirizing society because he had real insight into it. He saw into it. And I think he found it a lot more interesting than his own thoughts and emotions. And I might be projecting a little bit, because that's kind of the way I try to approach it. Or that's the way I feel. I don't write about myself too much either. Not because I don't have that inner life, but because I just feel like it's really boring for the rest of the world.
Man,
who cares?
You were the first person to say this, and I've said this for years when I explained my songwriting. And I even felt like I was doing a bad thing, because I'm like, I cannot write about real things. I storytell. I try to make up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, I was like, my life is boring.
Yeah. But there can be a lot to that storytelling too. You can be poignant and kind of address your own personal experience through metaphor quite a bit as a personal storyteller and songwriter. There's all kinds of people who've done that well. But that's not really Zappa's thing. Zappa's kind of in it for the laughs. I mean, really, it's not like Zappa, I don't even think really cared for or about the lyrics that much. It was just window dressing to allow him to write all the crazy melodies that were bouncing around in his head all the time. Right.
Yeah. I saw Dweezil. My dad took me to see Dweezil back in 2006.
Awesome.
And it was Steve Vai, Terry Bozzio. It was all the guys, right? And they played everything you wanted to hear. He played it, and it was brilliant. And Steve and I saw him, I think last year or the year before. He came around and he literally did nothing of that set. It was all the songs you didn't really know that well. And I looked it up afterwards, and it said his brother Ahmet Mohat was they're having a feud, and he's like, you can't play these specific songs anymore in concert. And I was like, what a drag.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, honestly, it was one of those weird things where, they say, there's no such thing as bad press. Zappa's name was in the New York Times for the first time in years, probably because of that fight. It spilled out very publicly. They were going back and forth publicly about it. So yeah, I don't know what became of it. I mean, I think he's still touring and doing a fair bit of that music, but it got ugly. Gail, when she died, Ahmet really took over a lot of the trust, and there were some disputes. That's with the money between him and
Dweezil, his thing was Dweezil play. It was Zappa play Zappa, right? And then he changed his tour to be Dweezil Zappa play whatever the fuck he wants was the name of the tour.
Yeah, that was right. That was it. Yeah, because he was. I think he had tried to name the tour after one of the records, so they were going to go do it as a tribute tour, and then that blow up happened, and he went out and he's mixing some of his original stuff in. And it's a great band. Dweezil's doing a great thing, keeping the institution alive. Back when I was in high school, I felt like Project Object was the best band running, performing that music. I got to see them with Don Preston and Napoleon Murphy Brock back in the day, which was very, very cool. And they still tour a little bit too. Oh, and Ike Willis was Napoleon and Ike, just seeing those two on stage.
Did one of them, I remember somebody, was it Napoleon who passed?
I think they're both still around.
Okay. Well, I remember one of the singers, maybe it was the guy.
George Duke died a year or two ago.
Oh, George Duke. That's maybe what it was.
Yeah.
Duke, the keyboard player.
Yeah. But Ike and Napoleon are both still around. I believe. I should check. 2020 sucked a lot, so who knows?
Yeah, right.
But but Dweezil really has built that band up. He's got a lot of it's mostly a band at this point of young LA session cats, basically, that are going out doing that full time with them, and they've really mastered that repertoire. It's really difficult stuff, and they have a ton of it. It sounds really polished. Dweezil's really done a good thing keeping it alive. It's they're big shoes to fill. He's not quite the showman, the force of nature. He's not the larger than life personality that his father was, but he's a damn good player, and he's doing a hell of a thing keeping that repertoire alive. So good on him.
Yeah, they represent the style very well.
Absolutely.
Even if he is a little more, personality wise, not as outlandish as Frank was, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Who
I know.
is as outlandish as Frank? Is like a.
I think he represents the style very well and does his honors his father's music perfectly.
Absolutely, man.
Well, yeah, he gets the members he gets in his band. They like have an understanding of what Frank did, and you can see that in shows.
They're all
awesome.
huge fans, and they're really nice people. I saw them in Great Barrington a couple years back, and got to meet some of them after the show. Really nice.
Oh, no way.
Really nice
Awesome.
people across the board. Yeah, very approachable, down to earth.
I love that. I love like Masters of the Universe. What be these like unbelievable musicians, and then they're just like you just go up to them like Victor Wooten in Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, or all the Flecktones. After every show, you can just really just go up to them and just shoot the shit, have a beer with them.
Yeah, like yeah, they're very approachable.
They'll go by like the tent and just hang out and be like, hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, it's great, man. It's awesome because so many elite players are not like that.
I
so
know.
When you meet the ones that are, it's like a lot of.
It's Victor. He's the golden standard because he's such like he is the master of the universe in terms of bass, in my opinion. Yeah. And to be so down to earth, I've met him probably 20 times in my whole life. I've seen him so many times. I've taken a class with him at Berkeley. Wow. It was a 20-person class. I got to participate in that. Awesome. Everywhere you meet him, he's just so humble. If you've seen, you should check out his TED Talks. Actually, a lot of what he says in his TED Talks, he speaks about in like just in personal when you meet him and stuff like that. So it's always good to see these unbelievable musicians, man. They're just when they're that cool and you can approach them, that's even better.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, in my experience, Bela is very much like that too. I mean, that guy's just like got to be the best player in the world at his instrument, or one of them, and
he's
super approachable. Yeah,
cool.
Blue collar kind of dude. It's great.
Yes.
You mentioned the Lizard Lounge because we had a couple of opportunities to play there. They fell through, but it seems like I think maybe we're in the same sort of area. Do you play? Because we play a lot in like Salem.
Oh, sure, yeah.
North Shore type area. Do you play up there at all in Salem?
Yeah. I've done Opus Underground a bunch of times over the years, and we used to play up. We used to love doing the Spotlight at Beverly, with our buddies. R.I.P. Yeah, no, I gotta pour one out for the Spotlight. I missed that place.
Yeah,
it was one of my favorite venues to play. So yeah, we used to hit up there all the time, and it's not North Shore, but I used to hit Lowell a fair bit. There's another venue
Steve's in Lowell now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, it's a cool town, man. Yeah, I used to play the back page with the quartet, basically a similar kind of lineup to what I did the Player 36 record with. So nice. Yeah, I'll play all over, man. I do a mix of stuff. Before COVID, I was hosting an open mic every Wednesday in Jamaica Plains. So I was just doing a mix of singer-songwriter and jazz solo, kind of having friends come out and periodically duetting with other people who wanted me to get up and be their karaoke machine or whatever. And I'll play, I'll do jazz dinner sets. I live in Watertown now. I was playing restaurants, doing solo sets or trio quartet sets at bars and restaurants, just kind of keeping it loose, mixing up the repertoire a little bit. I'm not big on doing the wedding thing, or I'm not really a top 40 guy. Like, I will play some top 40 tunes, but I like to approach it more like my repertoire. I want to put my spin and style on it, and kind of sing it in my key with my feel, So that's kind of my bread and butter in terms of performing around the greater Boston area.
Nice. Yeah, we often debate on covers, and it's like covers are one of those like unfortunate things. Maybe not so unfortunate all the time, but they are a necessity sometimes. And I kind of compare it to like, you have to kind of mix in those covers and then sneak in an original. So right.
Yeah, you gotta feed the people gently, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's spoon feed them. That's all.
yeah, that's right. Spoonful of sugar, as they say. It's a blessing and a curse. It's an easy way to relate to your audience, but it also can really detract from the original part of the art form that really attracts many of us to do it in the first place. So I always try and do more deep cut kind of stuff or covers that I don't think other people will try, or once in a while I'll do something cliche if I feel like I have an angle on it, and once in a while I'll just do a boring old Warhorse just because they're good tunes. They're usually overplayed for a reason.
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. We and like I said, the cover thing is a problem. We had an experience recently where we play a lot of we play a lot of funky music. It's like not I wouldn't say we're funk, but we're funky rock, I guess.
Sure.
And so we play a bunch of songs in a row that we're thinking people are going to get up and dance. That's the purpose of these songs, to move around and stuff. And we play a bunch of originals in a row, and out of nowhere, I look over to Steve because I'm like, listen, no one's dancing. I said, let's pull out a cover. So we pulled out Valerie by Amy Winehouse.
Sure.
Our
There
way
you
of
go.
doing it, right? And everybody got up and they danced. And everyone in the room was going nuts. And in my head, I was going, you fucking pieces of shit. And I was the maddest guy in the room. And I'm singing the song. And but afterwards, we pulled out one of ours and everybody was still dancing. And I was like,
Yeah,
well,
there you go. Yeah.
I found the equation.
But as soon as you stop the cover, the time starts ticking. It's slow.
Yeah, right. You're losing people fast, you know.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is,
so
all those wedding bands are like, they have those ready to go. You got to have 2 or 3 seconds and be right out there with the next beat, you know. So yeah, and that's a certain magic that happens when you have a large group of people dancing. You have to be very cognizant of that. That chemistry can blow up on you really fast. You got to keep
You got to read the
keep
room.
the high energy stuff.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes set lists are futile because we'll do set lists all the time, but then we'll just do audibles. Like Derek's like, should we do that?
Yeah.
No. Good. Let's go to set 2.
My statement is we have to save the crowd. Let's pull this one out.
Let's see.
Yeah, right. Or once in a while, just blow them out of the water, you know.
Yeah,
Whatever it is.
Dude.
So going back to Player 36, I know Steve has a favorite, I think, and I have a favorite. The whole album in general, like I already said this, I can't wait to buy it on vinyl and just look at it and then listen to it on Spotify because I don't want to touch it. My favorite tune, I think, Lament blew me away.
Oh, thanks, man.
Blew me out of the water, man. It's so good. It's like it reminded me of that like slower, swampier sort of Zappa jazz, and it like I could never find, because I remember I showed my father some Zappa jazz back in the day, and he's like, "Do you have any more of this?" And I'm like, "I'll keep searching for that style," and I couldn't find any other musician that really fit that mold of that specific jazz. And I think that for me was like, I can show my dad this song and be like, "Listen to this shit."
Thanks,
you know what I mean?
You know, I'm not sure I earned all that, but I greatly appreciate it, brother. Yeah, you know, it's that's a fairly old tune of mine. It's you know, it's a blues is what it is. It's just got kind of sort of hipper chords. You know, it's a blues that uses like sort of a Lydian sound.
Whoa.
So which is something, yeah, right, a little bit different.
Lydian.
Yeah, that's right. This is what the people want to talk. Everyone's all on these podcasts for the theory talk, so we can really chop it up if you guys want right now.
I mean, I know when you said Lydian, I've actually past couple months I've learned this way to master all the modes really easily, and I've struggled with them for years. I was never able to do it. Do you know Anthony Wellington, the bass player? I
know the name, yeah.
Anthony Wellington has this method called the Millpad system, right? Makes Lydian, Ionian, Lydian, Locrian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Dorian. And like after each letter, it's just he breaks it up into whole steps and half steps. It's just like, so with the way it looks on from top to bottom, it's like whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then it goes to 1 2 4 1 2 4 1 3 4. And I have it to me that just clicked for me. So when he said Lydian, I've past couple of months I've really been trying to master all the modes, and it's like it really comes in handy.
They do, yeah.
When you're soloing, even if
you're using them all the time, whether you know or not, you know, a lot of.
Even if you don't know what you're doing, you're still using it because it sounds right, you know.
Especially Dorian, Mixo, and Lydian are just absolutely everywhere, you know, in the jam scene and funk and jazz. You know, those sounds are really pretty iconic. I mean, they all get used a fair bit, but especially those three are super duper common.
What do you think about Locrian? Locrian is the most bizarre of them all, and I feel like it's very uncomfortable to play that.
Now we're getting into the real stuff. Yeah, well, you know, people don't use the Locrian mode too much. It's not played modally. I mean, I'm sure there are examples that you could find. You know, there are definitely jazz tunes where people will sit on that chord. You know, so for people who may not know the theory, you know, there's basically 7 unique notes in the major scale, and usually you have the first note is the root. But you can just kind of say, well, what if we just called the second note in that scale the root? Yeah. Well, now that we're calling that the root, that's kind of like a new scale, even though it's the same 7 notes. It just starts on a different spot, and that's a new mode. And then you can do that for the other modes. So the 7th mode he's talking about is the Locrian, and that's the one you don't see too often. But there are some jazz standards, you know, that mode is associated with a chord called a minor 7 flat 5, which is kind of this dark tense chord that appears in minor keys a lot. And there are jazz standards and tunes where people will sit on that chord for a while, which allows you to play like modal ideas in Locrian. But that's really mainly the use. It's very rare that you would see like a whole song.
It's a niche sound.
I used to see that chord, and I had a Stevie Wonder piano book, and once in a while I'd see the minor 7 flat 5th in there, and I'd be like, well, I guess I'm not playing this song. Turn the page because I didn't know how to play.
Well, you got to learn it, man. It's beautiful. You know, once you hear it, once you get it, it's everywhere. You know, it's all over the place. It's actually a fairly cliche sound in music. You know, it's used a ton. You know, you would know it if you heard it. But yeah, it's, when you're a beginner, it's just hard to visualize. It messes with your ears a little bit. You know. But once you get it under your fingers and in your ears, man, you know, it works. It's a gorgeous sound. It's just full of tension. It's begging to resolve somewhere. You know, so that's the beauty of it, and that's where you get your Locrian mode in there, man.
Dude, and I didn't even know. I know Ionian was just like a major scale, just the major,
right?
Whatever. But I didn't know Aeolian was minor. I just learned that like very recently. So I'm a newcomer relatively when it comes to music theory. Like I've been playing for years, and I learned by ear. I listened to a record and I'd break it down to 10-second sections, and I learned that way. So I come from the learning from the ear school, and I always struggled with music theory, and I figured now it's like I gotta learn this shit. You know, it's like at least the modes. You know,
if you learn enough by ear, the truth is you already knew them, and you just didn't know the theory. You know,
exactly.
That's how that stuff works. You're playing it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're just kind of putting the label to what you kind of already know. So I think it's definitely useful for musicians, obviously.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's powerful stuff. It opens a lot of doors. And like I said, you know, you don't really have to master all of them. Even Ionian and Aeolian, you know, those are the major and minor scales. You know, everyone knows those. They're not played modally that often. It's really more Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. Those are like the four that people will really use. That because Aeolian and Ionian just sound like normal major songs or minor songs. That's the thing. Those other ones are the ones that have like a more distinct sound that you don't appear as much in popular music.
I'm still like struggling. Like sometimes we'll be playing a song, or if I have a song idea, and if it's in Aeolian, I'll experiment and I'll just start soloing in Lydian or something. I'll just throw a completely random mode, and I don't know if that's even right to do that, but I'll
that's jazz, man.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You gotta go with what works, I guess.
You gotta try it, man. Well,
yeah. That's jazz.
All different types of tension.
Hell yeah.
What? So because you both of you clearly know theory more than I do, but I used to, my first instrument was piano and keyboard, and then I moved to acoustic guitar. That was sort of like the transition for me. And I still know way more things in the piano because it just looks right to me. I can play chords and they're so much easier than guitar. My fingers just don't adapt to some of those crazier chords. But I used to experiment where I'd record a song on acoustic and I'd play a C chord or something like that. And then I'd go on the piano and I'd play a G chord with the C. So I would play two different chords together, and it was fucking beautiful. And I never knew what, I was like, this has to be something. I just don't know what it's called.
Right.
So I wasn't sure if you guys knew what that was. Like if that was something that had a name for it, or if it's just meshing things together.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're talking about. It depends which chord is sort of on top register wise. You know, if the C chord is on the bottom, you have your C triad, C, E, G. And then if you put the G chord on top, you're adding G, B, D. Which are the three notes in the G triad. So you're doubling the G. So really what you have is C, E, G, B, D. And that's a really, really classic, gorgeous sound in jazz. What they would call that chord would be a major 9 chord.
Okay.
So you have the root triad of C major, C, E, G, and then you add a B natural, which is your major 7th. Which is why they call it, that would be a C major 7 chord, the one with 4 notes.
Right. Yep. So would it be like a C add 9 type chord?
Yeah. Well, the D is the add 9.
Oh, okay.
And since you have both the major 7 and the add 9, they would usually call it a major 9. That's what that would mean.
Major 9. Okay. Gotcha.
Major 7, right? Yeah. And so that's like one of the go-to chords in jazz. That's like the home base. In major key jazz tunes use that. Especially like the Great American Songbook era, Rodgers and Hammerstein and Gershwin and all those people. That's like the main defining sound of a lot of the way jazz was approached coming out of those songs. And the other one would be like C7 chords. That's more from the bluesy side of the American musical vocabulary. Use the dominant 7, the flat 7 instead of the major 7.
Right.
How deep do you guys want to go here? Because this actually, I've heard of websites. They compare the circle of fifths to the astrological signs.
Oh man,
dude! Sometimes I go deep dive on this shit. But it's cool because like you see patterns, right, in the universe. All these like you keep seeing the number 12 pop up, 7. It's like the more you look into shit, it's all like fucking everything's connected somehow, and that's
it's all hardwired, man. The music of the spheres, as they say.
Dude, it's like we're just as Jim Carrey would say, we're just floating tetrahedrons flying through infinity.
Is that what he says these days? Whatever he says, man. Yeah.
Kind of out there, So
yeah. He's deep. Don't talk to him about vaccines, but other than that, he's deep.
listen, man, Dumb and Dumber, man. That was a good movie. Well, no, I like looking at like stuff like you wouldn't necessarily think is related, and I don't know. I sometimes I'll go deep dive on this shit.
Yeah, there's synchronicities to it. Well, there's a lot of physics in the way we hear. It's
all right.
A lot of.
I don't mean to keep going off tangents here. Right?
Shoot.
Physics. Have you heard of John Coltrane? Obviously, John Coltrane. You've heard of him, obviously. Have you heard of the comparison? Adam Neely. Do you know Adam Neely?
Yeah. I know of him. Yeah.
He did an episode for 200,000 subscribers, right? And he did this thing with giant steps, right? And he's like, what does the sound of 200,000 notes played in the span of like 1 minute? He's like, apparently it's giant steps. And then you go a little deeper, and he doesn't really explain. I wish he would go more in depth of why that's the case. And then I found out John Coltrane is this like fucking genius physicist. He was into physics too. And I'm wondering, what if he knew something like with patterns? And I think the melody for giant steps has a mathematical meaning and significance in its own pattern.
Yeah, I mean, it's built symmetrically. I mean, he was most famous for adding this what they call Coltrane changes, which was taking the key center and moving it around in major thirds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's it's a symmetrical way. Like, in other words, major thirds evenly divide an octave into 3 parts.
Oh.
So it's a symmetrical sound,
and thus it sounds symmetrical.
Yeah, it does. It has. Yeah, it's a bit jarring, to people who haven't listened to much music like that. You don't see too much of it in popular music, especially in Giant Steps and a number of other songs. He's moving really rapidly through those. He's cycling very quickly to those changes, which is a more disorienting sound until your ear learns how to approach it and can think that fast.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like your mind has to understand the changes too. It's like, if you're a beginner, amateur jazz listener, which I would classify. I don't know a lot of like the theory behind jazz to really, I like that change right there. Like I understand theoretically why that works, but I feel like if you really want to truly understand like the John Coltrane's of the world, you have to like really know your stuff to appreciate it, to look at those.
Yeah. He's, some of that stuff in particular, you do have to develop your ear a little bit. Some people enjoy it naturally. But yeah, it's takes a little more work to be able to think quickly enough to be able to process stuff. I mean, he also, as you alluded to earlier, just played an unholy number of notes in short periods of time. He was famous for that sheets of sound thing. That's what they used to call it. And it's an apt description because that is precisely what he's doing. It is kind of sheets of sound.
Similar to the Black Page, the Zappa Black Page.
Yeah. Coltrane's, if you transcribe a Coltrane solo, there's definitely going to be some black pages on there for sure, man. That guy.
Black lines, dots. It's like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if this has anything to do with what you're talking about, really. I mean, but like we've had this discussion before where sometimes like I'll be playing, like I know the chords because when I played piano, I made sure when I was reading the music, I could at least be like, that's a C. I know how to play a G, D minor 7th, all that stuff. But now it's funny. Sometimes Steve and I will be writing a song with the band and I'll be like, this is a kind of like green chord. Like it becomes colors. And I know Jimi Hendrix would do that.
Yeah, that's right. Hendrix wanted to make things sound purple back in the days.
And the song Bold as Love, he talks about that. It's cool.
You know what that's called? That's called synesthesia.
Yeah.
Okay. You know that term? It's like some people, not everybody, but some people perceive sounds as colors. Like you may perceive this as green. Like the A note is green to you for some reason. But
Yep.
the thing is, it's frustrating because it's not the same for everybody. It's different. Like
Right. Yeah. It's,
yours is purple, whatever.
I went to college with a girl who had a twin, and they were both synesthetic readers. So it wasn't for music, but when they read a book, different words would be different colors.
Wow.
And her parents discovered this because when they were like, 6 or 7 or 8, and they were starting to learn to read their first couple words, they would be arguing about what color the words were, and the parents are going
So
like,
interesting.
what are you talking about? They're black and white, jackass, right? And as it turns out, no, not that simple. But yes, synesthesia is an interesting, most musical synesthetics also have perfect pitch because they can instantly recognize every note or chord that's played produces a different color sensation for them. So usually those are the most extreme examples of perfect pitch. Like those are the people where you could throw rocks at a piano and they could tell you absolutely every note you played in exactly the right octave.
That's like genius.
Very extreme. And there are players out there, that it's very interesting to listen to music that's written with that in mind. Notably, Olivier Messiaen, the 20th century French composer, was a guy who had musical synesthesia, and his vocabulary is fascinating. It's very beautiful and very haunting. And it's almost entirely outside of, he studied in a Western conservatory like anyone else, but there ain't no Beethoven to be found in that man's music. I just like what our normal convention 151 kind of music writing just really didn't have the same effect on him as it would on people like me and you who our hearing is hardwired a different way. So if you want to listen to someone whose whole harmonic sound is coming from a perception of color connected to music, Olivier Messiaen is a good listen.
I'll check that out for sure. And it's funny because like when we talk about music, it's like this was meant to represent the colors of someone who perceives things with synesthesia. It's funny because like it's sometimes you have to kind of sync up the listener because like again like that guy's C major chord could be green but mine's yellow. You know what I mean? Like
right.
There's got to be a way. It's got to be a way to sync up the synesthetic experience. Damn it!
I love in general just like different terms people have like for different parts of the song. Like for us, like regular, verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. But like Steve and I started calling the bridge the middle eight, like Lennon and McCartney. Every Beatles anthology I watched, like, and then we didn't have a part for the middle eight, and I'm like, I fucking love that phrase.
There you go. Well, the pop writing was a much more of an industry and a science back then in some ways,
Yeah, that's why microtonal music is not popular because it gives people
right. It's true.
That stuff's, man. It's like you go to different cultures. And this will be my last tangent. Now I'll step back.
Good.
Yeah, thank God. With microtonal music, it's like, we're used to our regular Western style scale. It's like whole note, half note, whole step, half step, right?
Yeah.
You got quarter steps, and I don't know too much about microtonal music, but I've tried to listen to it. And first impressions is obviously it sounds just like the piano is out of tune. Or whatever. It's like that's just out of tune, but really is that just me because I'm a product of Western music and that's just what I've been born with, because
it's a funny thing. I mean, the physics of it is strange. I studied at Berkeley with David Fizinski, who's a guitarist who specializes in microtonal guitar. So I personally never really studied it or learned it. I did more conventional guitar work with him, but I got to see him play it a lot and knew other people who pursued it. It's cool stuff. The microtonal music what they call microtonal, a lot of like Middle Eastern and Eastern European sounds. It's really actually similar to what we were talking about before. It's basically modal playing. They have one scale, one series of notes, and they're improvising just on that one scale, often over a pretty static or like repetitive bass line. The big difference though is that what we use in Western music as our major third is actually a little bit flat. They call it the equal temper. They call it the equal tempered piano. In order to get a piano totally in tune, every note has to be a little bit out of tune to develop or to divide the octave in 12. The notes we hear are based off of what's called the overtone series. Every time you play a note, there are other notes above it that resonate with it. Based on mathematical ratios between their frequencies.
Yes.
And you generate the other notes in a scale by studying those overtones. And then the real natural major third is actually a little sharp from the way we play it. So one of the basic elements of microtonal music is that a lot of Eastern and Middle Eastern societies use like a real third. They use a real major third, which is a little sharper than our third. We're used to the slightly duller third, but the thing about Western music and the reason we do that is because it's very hard to play big, dense chords and harmonies that way. You know, it works a lot better when you have a melody that's just got one bass note, you know, or it's kind of staying in the same key or in the same scale the whole time. If you try and move around a bunch of keys or play more elaborate harmonies, then the tuning really starts to screw you up. So, and this is something that that wasn't always the case in Western music. I mean, you know, I think around Bach's time is when they really started to figure out equal temperament. But you know, it's
the Bach's time.
Yeah. You know, he has a piece called the Well-Tempered Clavier, which is a reference specifically to that. You know, back in his time when he was playing and writing, different keys would have actually sounded different. You know, like when they were playing a harpsichord, it would have been tuned basically to C major using a real sharper E connected to, you know, if you tuned your harpsichord or your piano around the key of C, then like the key of E would sound different than it does today. The key of B would sound different. All the keys would have their own kind of distinct, the spacing between the notes wasn't equal.
Wow.
So that's when they say equal temperament. We set it up so that every note is an equal distance apart for 12 notes, but that's actually not purely in tune. It's off by like a little bit.
That gives so much like implications too. It's like, all right, well, what if we went that route with the perfect tuning? Like, what would that do for me? It would be probably a pain in the ass to like you said.
Well, this is what guys like David Fizinski do, right? You know, that there are people who try and exploit that, who like want to try and write music that uses all those fine tuning gradients and allows them to use the natural thirds and scales and stuff like that.
It's crazy because you think about how it affects our perception too. I think music is perception in a lot of ways, and like. This is probably getting way too out there, but you know, I think certain styles of music, it's kind of like why we see it in different regions of the world, maybe because everyone has their own specific type of music, and then we see that they have their own specific culture too. So music and culture obviously go hand in hand, and
absolutely,
I think music has a substantial effect on people's perceptions and how they view themselves in the world around them, and just the implications of sound and all that stuff. It's so vast, and I think we've barely just scratched the surface of what sound actually is.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah. It's lots yet to be written, man.
Yeah, man. Lots covered.
Tom, I get two really annoying questions for you. I've asked a lot of people these questions.
It's a high stress podcast. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, this is the part where I ask these questions, and you know, I never know what to expect, but they're fun. So you can answer this any way you want because I know you have several different projects, right? But so if you can open for any band or artist in the history of music, it's one show. You're the opener with whichever band you want, which you can decide that, and then this other artist is the closer. This is one night only. Who do you pick?
Listen, man, you can answer that one for me. You already know what the answer is, bro.
Oh
yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Zappa, Mingus, Mr. Bungle, Dillinger. Those are probably my acts. You know, I mean, I just tried to model my music on them. I would be the right opening act for some of those bands more than others. Probably Zappa would be the best fit.
Nice.
So yeah, no doubt it would be Frank.
Nice.
That was easy for you.
Awesome. I'd be shitting my pants. He'd probably rip me apart.
He'll probably fine you somehow.
I would do it anyway, man.
Oh man.
Send you home.
You know what I like about Zappa too? I like the fact that he would assign. I just wanted to see how Zappa wrote a song and then assigned different things to people. Like, you know, he'd be writing a song and be like, okay, now Terry, you're gonna be the character in the song who sings this. I want you to do that. I'll say this, and I want you guys to say this stuff. Because when you're watching some of the live shows from like the late 70s and the early 80s, everyone has a little part. Everyone's talking about something. And it's like, it's a show. It's more than just, I'm going to see music. It's like
theatrical.
It's so theatrical. And it's like, he's putting together an orchestration and a performance and a play. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, you know, he had a lot of really abstract musical ideas. And when you give people context, it allows them to appreciate abstraction. You know, people watch a horror movie and they expect these incredibly dissonant, disgusting, terrifying chords and ominous notes, or if you put that on their home stereo, they'd shut it off instantly. But in the context of a movie, it sounds right. And so Zappa used, narrative and satire and commentary to create context that could take all these more abstract musical ideas of his and make them entertaining, and
Right.
he was a genius. He was brilliant at it.
Absolutely. So, all right, this next question, it doesn't have to be musicians. It just could be anybody. That's what's kind of fun about this one. But if you, at the top of the spirit of the moment, you could have dinner with 3 people in the history of anything. What 3 people are going to be at your dinner?
History of anything. All right. Well, I'll leave Zappa off this list because it's too obvious. I don't want to go there. I mean, obviously I could throw Mingus on that list pretty easily. Trying to think who the most interesting person to have dinner with.
I will tell you, in the past, we've had some good answers. One person said Aleister Crowley, which got us on tangent.
Yeah, sure, right. Well, I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah.
I've been studying a little bit of ancient history. So I'm trying to think about if there's anyone from way back that would be pretty interesting to talk to.
How far back we talking here?
I've been doing a lot of Rome and Byzantine history recently. I just hitting the podcast and doing a little bit of reading.
Maybe Constantine. Emperor
Constantine's a pretty interesting one. Yeah, he's pretty serious. I don't know. I mean, it's the obvious pick, but Augustus was a pretty fascinating human being. Just kind of bluffed his way into creating this empire, or consolidating power over this empire. I don't know. The maybe for more recent, current stuff. This is a tough question, man.
It is.
There's a lot of people to talk to, And do they need to get along? Who's sitting next to who?
And that's why I
eating?
emphasize 2 things. So, number one, I always say spur of the moment because it's
yeah.
But the other thing is also you're right. People who may get along with each other too, because people in the past we've had on have been this person, because they're my favorites. I'm like, but would they get along? And he's like, oh, I didn't even think of that. So it's a lot of different things.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I'm glad no one's ever asked me this question because I have no.
It's difficult, man. Yeah, I would have put a couple hours of research into this. Well, let's see. I'm a big basketball fan. LeBron's my favorite player. I think he's a pretty brilliant dude.
Yeah.
I'd love to pick that guy's brain for a minute. So LeBron's a good modern pick, I think.
Nice.
Trying to think of another field I don't know. Politics is such a landmine.
Right.
Great, such a minefield.
Great phrase.
Yeah, it is.
It's such a yeah. These days, things. Yeah, right. So maybe I'm gonna stay away from all that.
The bridge burner.
Yeah. For authors, I like Thomas Pynchon a lot. Vonnegut would be a good pick. I think that guy was so funny and deep and interesting that I would love. I mean, he's not alive, obviously.
I'll have to look him up because I'm not familiar with him.
Oh yeah, Kurt Vonnegut. He's a science fiction author, but he had a really interesting life. He was in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge. He's someone who I think had a very sad personality, but really overcame it with art. He was a very compassionate person who overcame it with his quirky approach to art. He'd be a good person. So that's 2, Vonnegut and LeBron. I don't know what they'd talk about, but I guess that's that.
Mark
Augustus.
Augustus.
Okay. LeBron and Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't know, man. I don't know what we're eating. I don't know where we're going.
We had a guest on here. Do you know the band Tiger Man Woe?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, the guitarist John Feinberg. We had him on here, and he
awesome, man.
Making us laugh. He's like, wait a minute, who's paying for this? Because he's
right. That's another. Well, okay. Yeah. LeBron's paying
right.
at our dinner.
Yeah, because he was talking about. He said something about Lenin. He was not. He was talking about the Stalin Lenin era and stuff like that. And he was like, I forget what he said. But he was like, yeah, if someone else was paying, then maybe Lenin's lawyer. He was getting deep into who was paying and why. And
yeah,
it's
right.
Hilarious.
Yeah, well, with the communists, that could get touchy
right.
a little bit. Yeah, the state is paying. We're just taking our
write it off.
We're just we're just hanging out in the bread line together. Really, it's just
yeah.
Man,
that's a good answer though. I like that. That's we got. I don't know what you'd be eating, but maybe.
I like
what you're talking about.
I love throwing these modern people into a bowl of these different people from different. Because what's gonna happen? What would LeBron be giving them? What are you saying? What are you talking about? I don't know. It's just so cool to think of if Abraham Lincoln was sitting with Trump. And,
Lincoln would be a good choice. The other guy I've been nerding out on a little bit recently is Grant. who's like a pretty fascinating guy. But the thing is, I don't think Grant would talk very much. He'd be a boring
Right.
person. But you know,
Lee might be a better guy to just pick his brain.
Yeah,
and be
probably.
like,
Yeah, he was
holy
more
moly.
yeah.
Every time I think of Lee, I always think of that movie Gods and Generals. Did you ever see that?
I never saw it.
It's a 4-hour Civil War movie where Robert Duvall plays Robert E. Lee. And I remember in the movie theater, after 2 hours, you had to like literally take a break and go get refreshments. Like on the screen, it was like, now take your break. It was like, what?
Heavy stuff, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Intermission.
Yeah, right. But yeah, dude, I can't wait for this to end, this COVID thing. So, because like I said, like I want to see.
We're itching to get out, man.
I want to see the Tom Dowd group. I want to see you guys
live.
live.
We're gonna make it happen one way or another. I'm gonna have more
Right.
releases. You know, like I mentioned, I sent you guys that track. Strange Changes will have the single, the Tuna Genesis. We did a live studio video for that as well. So we're putting the finishing touches on the video. Just finished the mix, so I'm excited to release that. I got the other full-length Tom Dowd record going, and then I'm starting to work on a long-delayed concept album with Strange Changes. I'm starting to demo it. That'll be sort of the next big project for that side of the group. So
Nice.
trying to keep it moving forward, you know.
Yeah, you guys are sick, man. I can't wait to actually see you live. Hopefully,
Nice, man. Yeah, we were supposed to play in April with Strange Changes too, breaking all this stuff out. But
Yeah, literally 5 of our shows got canceled, and at this point, I'm literally in search of just playing outside shows. Anybody who wants a band, like I just need to play.
Yeah. I mean, I you know, like I said, I've got this stupid arm injury I'm just still coming back from, so it kind of worked out for me. I wouldn't have been able to play anyway, but I'm gonna be starting to go crazy soon.
Right.
Yeah, pretty soon. But no.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, man, I'm so glad we met, and I'm glad. I always say this, that Facebook. I hate what Facebook's become, but when it tells me these people who you don't know and who have mutual friends, and I'm like, I'm gonna add them, even though it seems like I'm a creep, and then maybe I can talk to them and see who they are.
And
that's how I meet people, and it's like amazing.
That's how the scene gets built, baby.
Yeah, man, it's a community now that we're trying to, sort of start and stuff with different people. But so glad I met you. Super fucking talented. Love your music. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, we'll chop it up when the world opens up again, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm gonna buy a vinyl. I'm gonna talk to you after this and see how.
Yeah. Hit me up, man. Hit me up. I can ship you one later this week.
That would be amazing.
Nice, dude. Thanks for coming on, man. Really nice meeting you. Again, let's keep in touch. We'll talk to you if you want to come back on, maybe in a month or two. If you have any updates, let us know.
Yeah. I'll be working stuff. Yeah, I might have the single out by then. So all good, man.
Awesome.
This shit again.
All right, dude.
Thanks so much.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Conspiracy, it's the only crutch that you have on me. The hog in the house with all his rats, we bite our thumbs and never tip our hats.